Okay, hopefully we're back. Anyways, this will be a new video. I didn't have the mic on. They changed YouTube a little bit, and I didn't check it out, so accidentally I messed up without the mic. Now we're recording. This is Funk the State. Your host, Colin Sleuth. I'll try and start over from where I was just talking. So I was referring to this story that we were talking about last week, where I was talking about this kid, 9-year-old boy, has a library that he built on the corner. It's one of these community libraries you can build in your own hometown. You should, if you care about children, if you care about literacy, and if you hate the state. You could build one of these on your property, that like this little boy did. He got in trouble. Basically, the government came and threatened him and his family and said, you got to stop what you're doing, otherwise we're going to drag you off to a cage, because you're not allowed to build your own library, because it's a code violation. Your little library is not literally attached to the building, and therefore it's a separate building, and that's a code violation. We're going to shut you down. But guess what? The mayor of that town listens to the Funk the State show, and he was swayed by all the media attention he was getting. No? Okay, it's good. It's fine. Not right now. I was distracted there for a second. He's not. You're not allowed to build these things. It's a code violation, but they didn't like the bad rep they were getting from the internet, everybody complaining that this is ridiculous and this kid should be allowed to build his own library. Go check out the video right here or somewhere if I can link it. Hopefully I'll be that savvy in 20 minutes to do so. And so we were talking about this. I was saying it's a great injustice. Well, they heard about all our discussion about it, and the town is saying, wait a minute, we're not going to chase this away. We're just going to not enforce this law. That's our plan. And so they can just do this. They can just not enforce the law. It's a law. It does exist. It's supposed to carry the weight of all laws. You're supposed to take it seriously. You're not supposed to just assume it's a joke. But then if you complain enough, and it becomes an inconvenience for the local government, then the actual neighbors who do the enforcement part of the law, of every law, are going to just be able to, if they want to, they could just refuse to enforce any bylaw or any real law on whatever level. That's what we need. We need the regular people. They are your neighbors. They don't know to hate the state like we do. And if we get them thinking about it all the time, they're going to more often choose to not enforce these unjust laws. And that's what everyone knows should have happened in Nazi Germany, and the heroic individuals in the worst states of history, like Nazi Germany. And yes, I did bring Nazi Germany into the discussion. Or at least governments of the world have judged the Nazis for participating, not because they were master planning the whole situation. Those people obviously need to be judged, not because they pulled a trigger. Certainly those people need to be judged. But even those people who went along with it when they knew it was wrong, who didn't decide to disobey orders, those people ought to be held responsible as well for crimes of the state. They're the ones actually enforcing it. If they're the police, if they're the teachers, whoever it is, if they're your local bylaw advisor or your local code enforcer who are shutting down a 9-year-old boy for building his own library, then we should look to those people. We should try and influence those people, and we certainly should blame those people and hold them accountable. So what's a great news is we don't need the Prime Minister or the President or the Queen to decide not to enforce these civilization destroying, totally unfunky bylaws. It's just regular people who are enforcing most of these laws, and if we can influence them, they can enforce these laws less or choose to not enforce them more. And this is how we will get more freedom. One way we can achieve a little bit more freedom very quickly. Because of the pressure, they have decided to stop enforcing the law. And they're going to try and figure out how they're going to move forward beyond that. But I'll tell them right now, all they have to do is stop enforcing the law. That's it. There's no process. There's no management needed to figure out what to do. You just don't enforce a law that says a kid can't build his own library. And this gets me to sort of what is partly a strategy question and partly a philosophy question about liberty, and that is, how do we transition from a statist scenario into a non-statist or less statist situation? What's the best way? Some people will say, or often we're left with two propositions here. One is called or referred to as gradualism, the idea that we can slowly change things from within often, or hopefully we will slowly see the erosion of the state, and over time we will make small gains, and those small gains will pile up and we will have a larger gain because of that reason. That might be a strategy, and strategically that could apply and be a sensible thing. I think that sometimes we need to go on a case-by-case basis with a lot of these things, and so sometimes gradualism makes sense. The other aspect to this is the whole philosophical attitude. What kind of philosophical attitude ought we to hold ourselves and propagate for other people who want to help join this movement? What's the best strategy in a philosophical sense? And there I would say radicalism, a radical shutdown of the state. Stop enforcing the laws, basically, is the key. So if we take prohibition of alcohol, they didn't need to build a new regime. In fact, it's a huge problem that they built a regime to manage their way out of the prohibition situation. And so that's haunted us for generations. What they should have done, instead of having a government-managed regime to deal with prohibition, is just stop enforcing the illegitimate laws pertaining to prohibition. And they can do that overnight. They don't have to write a new book and a new set of laws in order to do that. They just have to announce that they no longer enforce these laws, and then the officers won't enforce them anymore, or are not at least bound to enforce them. This is sort of like a Rothbardian, Murray Rothbard, the great libertarian. He was writing at the end of the Cold War, and he talked about the best way to de-socialize. When the Iron Curtain was coming down, these countries were looking for strategies to de-socialize, move from a socialized economy and society to a free economy and society. And a lot of people were arguing, oh, gradualism is what they need, or those people are just communists. Murray Rothbard pointed out that no, we don't need gradualism in abolishing slavery. If it's wrong, we announce it's wrong right now, and we should any more time enforcing it is a horrible crime against humanity. And so the same is true of the Iron Curtain. So when we radically desocialize, and he has a 4-point or 10-point plank. You should go check it out, How to Desocialize by Murray Rothbard. He talks about the theoretical concept of not gradualism, but extremism and radical shift towards freedom. This is the best technique because we can gain the most from it. We're already going to suffer from the transition. Some people are going to suffer, but this at least creates the opportunity for some to gain in the situation as quickly as possible, so that they can build a road forward. I mean, how would this apply to, say, the Uber, Lyft, and the taxi cab regime conversation that I've had here on the show before? I mean, we just stop enforcing the monopoly of cabs, and we stop charging a license, and we stop asking for a license. They don't have to write a new law to do that. We just stop doing it. Some people are going to be upset, but because we'll have done this, other people will immediately join into the market and start supplying the service. So we will see no disruption in the kind of service that Uber, Lyft, and taxi cabs are trying to supply. We don't need to have a favoritism and a government-managed transition towards liberty. That's the worst plan. So this ties in with the library thing by saying that if we just have the enforcers stop enforcing, we don't have to build a strategy towards the future. We let liberty play itself out. So, a couple more examples I've thought about while I've been talking about this issue with friends and stuff would be the military and also the teachers' school public indoctrination system. So we're having a struggle in my region about the public indoctrination system, and it's not getting the proper funding, and they're going on strike. I've talked about it on the show. You can go look at this link right up here and find out about it. And hopefully I'll get those links in there, and it won't just look like me waving my hands around. But so how do we best? They want a reformist. A lot of the union wants just give them the money and they'll continue until they argue for more money. That's basically their plan. We should all accept that. I argue for a radical Rothbardian solution of desocialization. I think that because the government is illegitimate and can't own anything and has no right at all to anything, is completely illegitimate and illegal criminal organization like the mafia, they don't own the school. Who owns the school is the people who use the school, or the taxpayers in the local region who've been paying for the school, or the students and the teachers, maybe even the principal, as if he quit his job. So what is Colin Sleuth's radical solution for the school problem that is acute in my region, but is true generally in all statist societies where they have monopoly government indoctrination system that they call education? A friend of mine, I'll just digress on this point a minute. He brought up an interesting concept. He's more of a gradualist than me, but he's hearing my radical anarchist libertarian voluntarist arguments, and so this is influencing him. So he was suggesting, why don't we have a transition time in the school where we'll start by reducing a day, we'll cut one day from the school system, and so the school week will be shorter, so parents will need to find educational care for their child on every Friday. So then we're already kickstarting the system towards other competitive options beside the government school system, and we can then give the teachers a raise but no one else a raise, and it will cost us less because they'll be teaching for less hours. So we give them a raise, they feel better, we start the process of reducing the school responsibility of educating children. I would add to that, we shorten the school year. Let's make it more like college, so it ends at spring break, and we extend the winter as far as possible, and we start there and we take one day off, and we promise every 2 years we're going to take another day off. And we give tax rebates to parents who or other citizens who are forced to pay the educational tax burden. We give them tax rebates for when they fund alternate options. So if they are willing to pay for a kid's tutoring, they don't have to pay that tax that would have gone to the government school system. And over a transition period, we reduce the responsibility and the burden on the public to indoctrinate the children. I think that's a great plan. A lot of people are going to buy that plan. I think it's a great way to start, but it has to be with a vision of totally abolishing the government monopoly school system. So that would be the part where I would just argue for no transition time and just a radical restructuring of the education system. So somewhere between my friend's point and the point I'm about to make, which would be this idea where I just would announce that the school is not legitimately owned by anyone. It's essentially unowned because the government is a criminal. So whoever homesteads it first is the rightful owner, unless someone has a better claim. So those homesteaders, the students, the parents, the taxpayers, the teachers, and the principal, if he quits his job, they should quit their job, stop working for the government. And if they do so, they could homestead the materials and the actual building of the school, and they could start their own voluntary school the next day. And maybe the federal government will invade them. Most small towns, that's not going to be the case. It'll just be looked at as some curiosity that will be laughed at. And when it shows itself to be successful, this concept could spread to other places. And very quickly, we could have a radical revolution in education where local communities essentially stole the property called the school from the federal government and announced that the federal government has not been responsible in its management of the school, and it can't be seen to be the legitimate owner, but the locals can be, and then we'll see what we can build with schools. We'll adopt this school, we'll homestead it, the teachers can go back to work, they'll be hired by the parents, and we'll see what they're worth, and we'll skip the whole union. We'll get rid of centralized power in education, which really is just damaging children. It's a violation of children's rights, if you want to put it that way. It's not a very libertarian way, but I see nothing wrong with that way of putting it. Another example, just to drag this thing out, would be the military. So, minarchists argue we need to, yes, we love the free market, but we love the free market in peanut butter sandwiches, and we love the free market in paper clips. And we love the free market in shoelaces, and that's why we never have a bubble in shoelaces, and we never have an economic crisis in paper clips. And basically, salt is free, even though it's an onerous process to make it, but it's free because the free market, produces it in such plenty and reduces all the unnatural hampering that happens from state-managed economic endeavors. So the minarchists will argue for freedom and the free market and all these things that they're accustomed to, all the products they get, and they will even want to extend that beyond what normal citizens think is right. They want to extend the free market into healthcare and other things, but they rarely, and if they do, they're really not a minarchist. I mean, maybe there's some minarchists. I guess Thomas Jefferson was against a standing army. A true minarchist ought to be against a standing army. So, but many minarchists argue for the police, the army, the court system. They think something about these things can't be supplied. Maybe it's too important to be supplied like paper clips. Of course, why, if it's so important, why would you hand it over to the government to manage? That's the worst manager. I would rather hand paper clips over to the government. Let the government destroy the paperclip industry, but don't have them destroy children's education. But that's what they've done, and that's what minarchists and other statists have argued for. Minarchists the least, other statists much more so. They've argued for this in the military, the most destructive and violent and murderous thing that the state does, except for indoctrinating the children. So how would Colin Sleuth's, what would Colin Sleuth's plan be for the military? Well, military has no right to exist in as much as it is run by the government. The materials owned by the military are wrongfully owned. They're illegitimately owned. They are open for homesteading because they are not properly owned. They're unowned, just like lakes and just like anything else the government claims to own. So I would disband the military overnight. I would announce the military no longer exists. And won't we be invaded by gangsters? I mean, maybe the government will try and reinvade us if we announce it has no legitimate ownership over the military. But what I would also announce is that those people who are enslaved to the military now are free to go, and the resources that they have at their disposal are free for homesteading. So the soldiers, the different members who are properly trained, supposedly trustable with all these materials and all these weapons and stuff, they would have the right to grab those things and bring them home back to their communities. This sounds crazy, but are these people really going to wage war on their communities, or are they going to defend their communities against foreign aggressors? So then we would have a whole country of ex-soldiers who are now free to defend their actual neighborhoods, who are armed with all the materials of the military. Sounds like a dream to me. I mean, this country is never going to be invaded when behind every blade of grass is a housewife with a rocket launcher, or ex-Marine who's now free to pursue productive endeavors, and yet he's still as armed as he was. There's no way that any foreign aggressor or any mafia or any Mexican drug lord or any Hells Angels or any wannabe government like that is going to invade a country which has this kind of reputation of weapons ownership. So we radically, not gradually, decentralize the military, sort of let itself tear itself apart and let the members homestead the materials, bring them home. It's a new way to think, bring the troops home. But we don't want this huge arsenal of weapons, like all the troops to come home and find liberty and leave these weapons there in the hands of the Leviathan state. We need those weapons not to be dumped in the ocean or landfill, and they're useful so they could be distributed out to the population, not in some sort of socialist way, but just homesteaded by the first comer. Those soldiers, the janitor, whoever it is who's working at the base would be the one who homesteaded. So, these are just ideas. I want to hear what you think about these ideas. Hopefully you can sit through the more glitchiness and the stuff that happened at the beginning of this video. It's a short video. Hopefully I've covered something interesting for you. If you like these ideas, maybe you like my friend's idea, maybe you like my idea, maybe you have a whole new idea. It's not really a linear world, the world of ideas. It's a, infinitely matrixed scene, the world of ideas, so we can connect from different points, and they don't have to be opposing. And I'm looking to refine my theory or develop it further or radicalize it even further or make it more palatable or make it more radical and more palatable. So I'm looking for you guys out there, the few of you out there who enjoy Funk the State, the funksters out there. If you have any ideas, if you have any plans, join me, talk about it. You can, post a comment here on YouTube or connect with me on Facebook or on Twitter at Colin Sleuth or on liberty.me at Colin Sleuth, and you can join the conversation. Hopefully we can start up a conversation here. I want to hear what you guys think about the show, what you think I should talk about, or what would make the show better, your ideas. Maybe I've spurred you on to have a new thought about something. Please tell me about it. I'm very much interested in that. I really do want to have the discussion with you guys. I hope that you've been having a great week. Hope it's getting sunny for everybody. Finally, it's going to get hot here where I live on top of this crazy mountain, and we'll be hanging out on the beach doing important things, building sandcastles, and just generally funking out and hating the state every single second. From the first moment I wake up to the final last moment where my head hits whatever pillow is available. I hate the state, and I hope you do too. This has been Colin Sleuth. Join me. Talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us. Funk the State.